Welcome to Spotlight. I'm joined today by Matthew Bellringer, and really interested in looking forward to this conversation because Matthew is very much a people person, as you are about to find out. He's interested in human development, in training, in neurodiversity, all kinds of issues around people and how that impacts them in teams and in their own work. So, Matthew, welcome to the call. It's good to speak to you.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, Matthew, one of the things that I noticed on your profile, you made this statement. You said being neurodiverse can be a challenge, not just for working in an organization, but also if you're working for yourself. So my first question is, where's your interest in neurodiversity come from? We'll get that one looked at first. But then secondly, I'd like to dig a little bit more about working for yourself and how that can be a challenge with yourself. So two questions to get you started there. Where would you like to start, Matthew?
Yeah, well, I'll start with where my interest in neurodiversity comes from, if that's okay. So, it is a personal interest and a professional interest as well. I have 15, 20 years in tech behind me in various ways, and I got really interested in why the projects that we were running worked from a technical perspective, but didn't work from a human perspective.
Yeah.
We'd done everything that everyone laid out. It all worked. All the tests passed. Everything was as it should be.
Yeah.
Yet it didn't result in the change that people actually wanted. And I got really fascinated by that. I ended up studying psychology part-time, and then it kind of went from there. So this relationship between people and technology, how we create it, how we use it, got really interesting. And then I stepped away from working for another organization to do that on my own. And as part of the self-discovery process that came with having my own business and kind of being in that situation, I discovered I had ADHD. Then I discovered I had autism. So I already knew I was dyslexic as well. So I had that as a child. But
it's great to get that diagnosed early, isn't it, Matthew?
yeah, it was really helpful to have some early diagnosis. Yeah. I think, like a lot of people who are adult discovery for neurodivergent conditions, that was there was a mixture of like, I'm really pleased I found this out, but oh, I wish I'd found it out earlier.
Yeah.
That's a real thing that can take quite a lot of processing and being with. But and I would want to just pick you up on the language around this, because language is kind of important. Is individuals are neurodivergent.
Yes.
The population is neurodiverse.
Right.
So
okay.
Neurodiverse is a population level thing. It means it's this simple, really biological fact that we all have different wiring. And we all experience the world differently, think differently, and feel differently as a result of that wiring.
Yes.
It's just that some of us sit quite a long way outside of the normal expectations of what that wiring will be, and that makes us neurodivergent.
Do you think that kind of explains to some extent where you're obviously a systems person and you look at systems and you think, well, they're not interfacing with the population, it's not interfacing with business and teams properly. So in a sense, it's your neurodivergent bugger, stop. So one of the things that struck me, Matthew, is that it's your own condition in a sense that's led you to develop an interest in the condition. You were looking at how systems and people were not interfacing or don't interface well, and obviously you've done some research into that and aware of your own conditions, recognizing that the whole population has elements of neurodiversity. We don't see the world the same way, as you say. But clearly, this is a really deep-seated interest. So how did it get you looking at almost an individual level? To come back to my earlier question is, people struggle with their own neurodiverse conditions in a self-employed setup. How do you work with people like that? What sort of support are you offering or insights you're offering to those kind of individuals?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, some of this is born of my own struggles and my own frustrations, for sure. And there is a campaigning to some degree or advocacy element to the work that I'm doing with organizations because there is so much value there being left on the table, actually, and a frustration that comes with that. And when you're running your own business, quite a lot of that frustration, the difficulty is you for most people, you leave, someone managing you who didn't really get it and didn't really know what they were doing, and that person then becomes you.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, okay, now what do I do?
How do you manage your own condition?
Exactly.
Yes.
And particularly when you haven't had very effective methods to do it in the past.
Yes.
And so a lot of the work is about experimenting and developing what those methods to support your really high performance are going to be. And I do this is true whether I'm working in a business, in a business context, or with someone who has control over that business context, because actually it's the same thing. Very often it's about what's going to give someone with unconventional talent the support they need to really get that out in the world and really thrive. And that's going to mean doing things differently. And I tend to specialize in working with professionals and business owners. So the problems that those people face are not straightforward problems anyway. Their day-to-day work is not like, okay, press a button, do a thing, and you get the outcome. It's much more complex than that. And so how do we engage with doing things differently? And how do we benefit from that? And how do we share that benefit? And so it's about developing these different working practices that are founded in really approaching problems from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because for me, that's the essence of innovation and the essence of the value that a lot of neurodivergent people have to offer the world.
Yeah. I think I can understand that the way the challenges present themselves is very much the same if somebody's working for themselves or they're part of an organization. I would imagine the challenge for you, though, is slightly different, because with an organization, hopefully an organization that recognize that they may have people in it that look at the world slightly different, and their challenge is to work with them, embrace them, get the best out of them. And hopefully, most progressive organizations would want to do that. I'm sure there's a whole group of companies that would rather not work with divergent people in the first place, but that's a separate problem. But with the neurodivergent business owner that's working for themselves, surely part of the challenge is helping them almost to step out of their body, see themselves objectively and say, well, where are your strengths? Where are your limitations? How do you work best in certain circumstances? How do you manage your time effectively? How do you use your strengths in communication? Or how do you get around communication challenges that you might have? So the problem might present in the same way, but the problem to you or the challenge to you in managing it, I guess, might be quite different.
It's somewhat different, though. If you think about it, most professionals are working with quite a high degree of autonomy already.
Yeah.
When I ran a team of experts, they knew what they were doing better than what I understood. And
you were auditing what they were doing.
The nature and supporting them. In many ways, it's almost like a coaching relationship quite a lot of the time, actually, because it's you can't direct high-level professionals. No. That isn't an effective way of managing, because that requires you're limiting their ability to perform to your knowledge, which isn't, when you've hired them for their specific knowledge, is a waste of resources. So what you really want to do is develop that capacity for kind of self-management, self-leadership, and self-advocacy, whether or not someone's working in an organization or not. So there is something quite in common. The difference is when you're working with business owners have more control over the environment. And so, that immediate environment, you can't change your boss if you're a professional, although your boss might get some training with someone like me to be a better support person. But you're kind of your support person, and you're kind of the manager and the staff member at the same time.
That's the environment they're working in. It is the environment. You can fiddle with it, you could tinkle with it, but you can't essentially change it.
Yes, and so you have a lot more levers to pull as a business owner. You have a lot more degrees of freedom, and that is both a positive and a negative.
Yeah,
because you can do anything. I think the thing the thing that I find so attractive about business very often is, whilst there are very specific things you have to do, and they're non-negotiable in terms of what an effective business, a functioning business is, the way that you can achieve them is almost infinitely variable.
Yes, absolutely.
And I really love that. And that's one of the reasons that neurodivergent people can do so well in a business, if they can find that path for themselves, is their way of doing that could be completely different from the right way or the common way or the normal way. But if it works, and it works for them in the business, it's perfect. It works. So you've got all of that degrees of freedom to explore, which is great, but it can be very, very difficult as a search problem. Like, where do you start? How do you start on this? And there is a lot of external pressure from people selling methods and selling approaches that might be helpful, but are unlikely to be. And so a lot of it is, how do you develop this capability of figuring it out on your own? And when I'm working with an organizational level, when I'm working with an organization, I'm also working with them on how to figure it out, those practices of developing these ideas. But when you're a business owner, you're doing a large amount of that yourself.
So if I put my business coaching hat on now, when you're in the organization and you're figuring it out with them, you're facilitating maybe a bit of coaching, a bit of mentoring the various parties concerned. Obviously, it's going to be very bespoke. I guess my interest is, how do you find your customers, your clients in the first place? Because, obviously you've got a great deal of talent, a great deal of expertise in what you do. But I'm sure there are many businesses out there that are unaware of what they don't know. They don't know what they don't know, et cetera, particularly when it comes around neurodiversity. So it's part of your job, part of your role to draw attention to this situation and then educate as part of your lead into perhaps developing prospective customers and clients from it.
Absolutely. And, I face, as a neurodivergent business owner, the problems that a lot of my clients face. And one of those really big issues is, my perspective on this is different to the conventional perspective. And so what I have to do before I can really work with someone, or as I work with someone, is bring them to that perspective so that they can then work and work in the way that I would like to work, and the work that I know will get them the benefits that they can get. So, but what I need to do is meet them where they are.
Yes.
Absolutely. And a lot of the work is actually figuring out where that is and how to bring people to your perspective. And so actually, again, some of the work I do with people, and the work I'm continually doing on my own business, is really, how is this understood by the people that I want to reach? And how can I bring them to that understanding? So you might call that education, you might call that advocacy. For me, it's kind of a positive side effect. So it's the right thing to do for my business, is how I find clients. But it's a really positive effect on the wider world, that all of the people, far more people who encounter my content are going to encounter my content than are going to ever become clients. That's just the nature of content.
Yes.
But what I can do is get that out there. And so people are thinking and kind of getting those ideas out there, which has a positive effect on neurodivergent people and their chances of succeeding in employment in general, or succeeding in business in general, which for me is actually part of the reason I do what I do.
And it sounds as though what you do has a massive impact on people's lives, both individual, members of a team, of an organization, and the leadership as well. Do you get frustrated with the idea that, how do I scale this? How can I make a bigger impact to a bigger group of people? Because it's not a conventional intervention between many businesses and external consultants. Just interested to know whether that is just a problem that you kind of think, well, I'm just going to do what I can, or do you think about scaling in some way?
I do, and you're right, it is a frustration. The frustration isn't that there aren't off-the-shelf methods to do it. That I've accepted a long time ago, that's never gonna,
it can't be. It
can't be. By definition, it can't be. What is frustrating is that the support available that would help develop those ideas So things like granting bodies around developing innovative ideas.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they haven't crossed the bridge to be able to think in terms of these different perspectives.
Yeah.
The kind of if we think about business or a particular solution as answering a question,
Yes.
the kind of questions that they answer are actually very conventional and quite constrained. And the only way that you can secure a grant is if you're answering one of these relatively conventional questions. If you're answering a more unconventional question, unfortunately, the kind of support available for building up these processes doesn't really exist. And that, for me, is the point of frustration. It's the ways of thinking embedded in the systems that should be able to support us but don't. That is for me is what I find the most tiresome to encounter repeatedly.
No, I understand that, Matthew. But I'm aware also that you're involved in some other organisations. So maybe to some degree that mitigates your frustrations. Tell us about your broader work.
Yeah, so I've been an active member of BCS, the Chartered Institute of IT, for 15 years now. And a few years ago, I realized there was nothing around neurodiversity, and I happened to contact them independently at the same time as someone else. We both, both wrote, and so we started this group within BCS called Neurodiverse IT. And the function of the group is really to support neurodivergent people in tech careers. So getting into the, training, getting qualified, getting into the career, progressing and succeeding in the career. And we do that partly because it delivers value to the organization, but partly because it's really important. Digital technology is so incredibly ubiquitous and so powerful potentially at helping people. I was at the launch of the Royal Society's digital technology report last night, where they're talking about the value of that and how important that is. But one of the key ways we can make sure that the stuff is accessible and the stuff covers all of the possible perspectives and bases is to make sure that there's a really wide breadth of lived experience represented in the people designing and developing technology. So it's really important for accessibility and for these things that are vital to our lives now that a lot of people are represented. So that's why we're focusing on how we're focusing in neurodiverse IT.
So, well, it's a fascinating line of work that you do, and obviously of massive benefit. You shared some of your frustrations as well and some of the opportunities. Where do you think sort of wider understanding in the world of commerce and industry is going? Do you see rays of hope? Do you see, shining lights? What's happening in terms of the development of support to neurodivergence in work?
Yeah, it's an interesting time because of the relationship between disability work and general, more wider inclusivity work and the political environment in the US. I work with a lot of tech companies, and that is not something that's considered a priority or important, or perhaps is even considered harmful at this point in the US.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting. All of my research, and part of the reason I work in the innovation space, suggests that actually diversity is a really big driver of organizational success. And, in a way, the market will sort this out in the long run. In
tech industries, I mean, I would have assumed particularly in tech industries.
And the big tech companies know that. They're not doing this out of charity. The successful tech companies are pushing diversity because they understand that it drives their performance, their business performance primarily.
Yes.
And what we have seen, which I think is actually broadly healthy, is a start to shift towards the way that budgets are allocated towards actual more purposeful things. So instead of it being like general, like inclusivity, we want to raise our neurodiversity, it's like we've got this specific objective and we understand that neurodiversity can help us achieve that. Yeah. And so we're going to fund that. And I think that intentional funding is actually a really healthy shift.
It's an outcome-driven approach, isn't it? It's an
exactly.
Approach. Yeah. I think that's really fascinating. I think that's a really important element there. We know that neurodiversity can drive change because people are thinking outside the box, are seeing the world through different ways. But ultimately, it's coming back to the profit motive, and companies are thinking, well, we need to invest in this which means invest in our people and our understanding of our people in order to maximize the opportunities for innovation and change.
Mm.
Profit motive driven. Maybe that's slightly cynical of me, but it's important. The outcome is what matters at the end of the day, I suppose.
I think it's profit motive, but it's a kind of, it's a longer term profit. That's the interesting thing. If you're driven quarter by quarter, you're not going to do this. But if you're driven quarter by quarter, eventually your business is going to encounter something that it can't cope with.
Yeah.
And the point of driving diversity is it's the innovation and the resilience and the awareness around all that that the diversity gives you. So it's that longevity of the business. And I think if you're thinking long term, you've got to be thinking about this. If you're thinking short term, well, if you're in a very short term business, if you own a very short term business, then you want to be ready to, you want to understand that that's the decision you're making and that could go away at any time. If you want the thing to keep thriving, you've got to think about this.
Yeah. And it's interesting. The thoughts just occurred to me. Sometimes I do work with the business I work with on vision and mission and culture as well. And one thing that I've noticed is that those organizations that have long-term vision, long-term planning, tend to be the ones that actually have resilience and tend to be around for 10, 15, 20 years because they're looking to to sustainable, visionary things to do in their business. Matthew, it's been absolutely fascinating. There's so much in there to unpick. But I think the important message that I've taken out of it is, look, no matter who they are, we need to invest in our people. They're part of the vision. They're part of the, where a business and an organization will go. And it's really good to see the work that you've been doing in that area.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. It's that breadth of perspective that's gonna really move any business forward. It's brilliant. So thank you very much for giving me the chance to talk about it all.
You're welcome, Matthew. Thank you very much.